Welcome. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to our Research Refresh webinar. My name is Sahara Moon-Chapotin. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, or FFAR. Just a couple notes. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website on the Research Strategy Refresh webpage. I really appreciate all of you taking the time being here today, and we really look forward to your inputs into this important effort. We are joined today, we'll have two speakers joining me, but first I will tell you just a little bit about FFAR. Next slide, please. FFAR was launched in the 2014 Farm Bill, and we were given the mandate to form public-private partnerships. We invest in research across the food and agriculture system. We work with industry, with producer associations, with colleges and universities, and with foundations and other nonprofits. To date, FFAR has made over 300 awards. We work with over 550 partners, and we have awarded over $600 million in both FFAR and matching funds. Next slide, please. We support user-driven, actionable research. Our research aims to fill critical knowledge gaps. We involve farmers and funders to solve the challenges that we're facing today in food and agriculture. And we involve private sector partners in our research collaborations to help ensure that the innovations and the solutions reach farmers and other end users. Next slide, please. So I'm pleased today to be joined by both public and private sector colleagues to highlight the importance of this research strategy refresh. To kick off our discussion about the research strategy refresh, we will hear recorded remarks from Dr. Dion Toombs, the Acting Director of the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA, at the United States Department of Agriculture's extramural grant funding agency for agricultural research, education, and extension programs across the nation. Dr. Toombs is also an ex officio member of the FFAR Board of Directors. I'm very grateful to Dr. Toombs for having provided these remarks. And let's hear from Dr. Toombs.
Hello, everyone. I am pleased to join you all today to discuss the importance of FFAR's research strategy refresh process. My name is Dion Toombs, and I serve as the Acting Director of the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture's extramural grant funding agency for agriculture research, education, and extension programs. In this role, I also serve as an ex officio member of the FFAR Board of Directors. FFAR has been a supportive partner of USDA since it was created in the 2004 Farm Bill to fund public-private partnerships and complement USDA's agenda. FFAR and USDA work closely together to ensure our research efforts are complementary and in alignment. With FFAR's unique funding model, public taxpayer dollars can be multiplied by private investments to increase agriculture research investment. Agriculture research development can mitigate animal and plant diseases, promote environmental sustainability, and increase productivity and product quality. To ensure our agriculture system continues to thrive, we need to develop tools, technologies, and strategies that will allow us to address future strains of the food system. The first step in addressing some of the challenges facing food and agriculture is fully understanding what these obstacles are by engaging with stakeholders. FFAR's research strategy refresh is a great opportunity to take stock of what research our food system needs. A refresh research strategy ensures that producer, consumer, and environmental needs are met. USDA has supported America's producers in their work to produce a safe and abundant food supply. We are thrilled that FFAR is funding research that will positively impact producers, the environment, and global food supply.
Great, thank you. So grateful to Dr. Toombs for having provided these remarks. And just to clarify, FAR was established in the 2014 Farm Bill. Next, I would like to turn the floor to FAR board member, Dr. Denise Hurd, Vice President of Research for the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association. Dr. Hurd currently administers the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association's comprehensive research program that encompasses all components of poultry and egg production and processing. She also serves as a valued member of FAR's Scientific Program Committee. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Hurd.
Thank you, Dr. Chapperton, and hello, everyone. I am thrilled to join you all today to discuss the importance of FAR's research strategy refresh. In addition to serving on the FAR Board of Directors, I am currently the Vice President of Research at U.S. Poultry and Egg Association. On the FAR Board of Directors, I serve on the Scientific Program Committee that helps to oversee research and programs currently funded by the Foundation. I know firsthand, as many of you also do, the power of transformative agricultural research investments. To remain at the forefront of agricultural technology development, the first step is to understand the current research landscape. Food and agriculture challenges and the needs in this field are most constantly evolving. As such, it is critically important to periodically reevaluate those research priorities. It's been especially apparent over the past few years that agricultural research has had a direct and profound impact on every aspect of the food system. From zoonotic diseases to avian influenza, supply chain disruptions, and severe weather events, the impacts are being felt all around us. At the U.S. Poultry and Egg Association, we are dedicated to the growth, progress, and welfare of the poultry industry. We've seen from our stakeholders how research needs continually develop and evolve, and I know that is a common theme across the food and agricultural sector. FAR was formed in 2014 and began funding research in 2015. And while FAR has had many touch points with various stakeholders over the years, the research strategy refresh goes just a step further by facilitating an intensive examination of the funding priorities to ensure alignment with stakeholder needs. Through this research strategy refresh, FAR is developing a research framework that supports the industry, the farmers, and the consumer needs as well. In addition to the ongoing conversations FAR is conducting with stakeholders regarding this process, FAR is also soliciting input from the public via a web-based portal to ensure that the foundation is collecting comprehensive feedback. I am thrilled that FAR has taken this critical step to ensuring that the industry, producers, associations, and other stakeholders can directly benefit from the research FAR funds. So thank you for your interest and participation in this process. I am looking forward to seeing the results of this research strategy refresh and how your feedback will shape this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hurd, for those words. Next slide, please. So let me tell you now a bit about our research strategy refresh. FAR currently invests in research across the food and agriculture landscape across 6 challenge areas that were established some years ago. We're undertaking this current effort to ensure that our research remains current and that it will meet the needs of today's food and agriculture challenges and is reflective of stakeholder input. We're taking a multi-pronged approach, and we aim to deliver an evidence-based research roadmap by this summer. We're seeking robust stakeholder engagement. Today's webinar is kicking off that process, and that's where we're hoping you all will engage. And we're aiming to answer some key questions. What's the current state of food and agriculture? What do you, our stakeholders, need from us? And where can FAR's research have the most impact? We want to ensure that our research investments are aligned with federal investments, with the private sector, with future needs, with the needs of farmers and others across the food and agriculture landscape. And we want to bring a more integrated approach to our work, working across challenge areas, across disciplines, ensuring that we have the broadest representation in this effort as possible. Next slide. This is our roadmap right here. We started by developing a theory of change. I'll share that with you today. The theory of change outlines how we believe that our investments will lead to the high-level outcomes and impacts that we need in food and agriculture today. We're hearing from stakeholders through a range of engagements, including today's session, our upcoming public comment period, but also through focused conversations with stakeholder groups, ensuring we hear from producers, from industry, from academia, and others in the food and agriculture system. We're also bringing an analytical approach to this process, ensuring that our prioritization and our outcomes are evidence-based. And then finally, we plan to have a refreshed research strategy to share with you this summer, and we'll begin implementing it this fall with all of you, our partners, on board. So this is a high-level overview of our theory of change. And don't worry, there's a lot on the slide. I'm going to break down portions of this on the next slides, but I wanted you to see how it all fits together. At the top here in the green box, we have our ultimate outcomes. This is, we aim to ensure that the US food and agriculture system supports producers, sustains the environment, and equitably nourishes our population. At the bottom, we have the draft research themes and potential research areas. This is where we're going to ask for your feedback. And then as you move up the theory of change, you can see how the research would deliver. For example, in this bright orange box here, we anticipate that the research will provide the technologies, the knowledge, and the decision-making tools needed from farm to market. In the middle, you can see a bit about how we anticipate working, how we're going to prioritize those high-impact areas, how we're going to partner with stakeholders. And then in blue over here, you have our pathways to impact. This is how we intend to get there, the kinds of things that we will do as we design our research opportunities, as we work with our partners, and as we put together a learning agenda. And we also support scientific workforce development. The gray box here refers to some necessary conditions that are outside of our control as a research organization, but these are the policies that need to be in place to enable profitable business decisions and incentivize positive environmental outcomes. This has to happen in parallel with the research investments we are making. And then over here, of course, you see that we will be working with a broad range of research, design, and adoption partners across our theory of change. An overlay on all of this is that we're working in a way that provides equitable and inclusive opportunities for all of our research, design, and adoption partners to work with us. I believe strongly that this is what will make our outcomes stronger and more actionable. Next slide. Okay, now I will start to break it down a bit. This green box over here was the top box on our diagram. We see this as the ultimate outcome that we're aiming for, but you could break it down a bit and say that we would like to see nutritious, sustainably sourced, socially equitable, and culturally preferred foods consistently available in all communities. We believe this is a very strong and important outcome of research. We also would like to see agricultural production systems that are tailored to site-specific conditions and business goals that yield the high productivity, the efficiency, and the profitability that farmers need, that help farmers be resilient and the systems to be resilient against biotic and abiotic threats, and that we have robust animal, human, and ecosystem health. So the question that we will be asking you to consider as you provide input over the next 30 business days is, will these envisioned impacts deliver what we need to survive, to really build a robust food and agriculture system today? You might have thoughts, but hold on to those for the moment. Now I will look down to the research prioritization process. Here are some of our initial thoughts on how we would prioritize research. We would prioritize research that provides significant benefits to producers and/or to the food system enterprises. We would prioritize research that increase nutrition and ecosystem health. And we would prioritize research that will benefit from public-private collaboration, because of course that is how FFAR works. We work through public-private partnerships. So the question for you here is, what else should we consider as we prioritize our research areas? So now I'm getting into our draft research themes. And I say draft because this is very much a draft. This is the stage where we are really looking for your inputs to inform our overall strategy. We've identified 3 draft research themes. The first relates to research on sustainable production systems. This theme would generate the information and the technology that producers, so that producers can profitably adapt their systems to changing environmental conditions while meeting sustainability goals. This involves technologies or information such as novel germplasm, new sensing technologies, management practices, site-specific decision tools, energy co-production, systems understanding. The list is quite long, but these are all the technologies and the inputs that we need to really make our production systems more sustainable, profitable, and productive. So a question for the audience and for you all here is, do you see your research needs in this theme? Our second theme is about research on equitable access to nutritious foods. This would fill in the gaps in information and technologies for the food system to make the highly nutritious, sustainably sourced, socially, equitably, and culturally preferred foods available in all communities. That is a tall order, but it's one where I believe that research can have tremendous impact. So again, the question for you, do you see your research needs in this theme? Our third theme reflects the fact that neither of the first two themes can work on their own. Production systems impact the environment, demand for food drives production systems, just as a couple examples. And so this research theme is about convergence research for systems transformation. We want to bring an explicit approach to using convergent science and systems approaches to the research we're doing. And we want to really integrate across domains to support transformation of the US food and agriculture system. Again, question for stakeholder input. Do you see your research needs in this theme? And then finally, these are some of the potential research areas that we have identified. We're listing these here separately, but to be impactful, our projects will work across these disciplines and will integrate different approaches and expertise. So a question for you to consider is, what other research disciplines should we consider to maximize our impact? Next slide. So now I get to how you can get involved. This webinar recording will be available on our website. After the webinar, we'll open our comment portal. For the next 30 business days, you can go and enter your comments. We will review all the comments, and we will use those to inform our theory of change and to inform our research strategy and to inform the prioritization of the research that FFAR will invest in. We'll be putting additional opportunities and information on our website as well. Next slide. So just as a preview, these are the questions that we'll be asking in the web form. They relate to, what are your initial impressions and reactions to what I presented today? What are the big challenges or issues that you are currently facing in your sector? What do you think will be the big challenges or opportunities in the future of your field? And specifically, what do you need research to deliver? And what else should FFAR be considering as we develop, refine, and prioritize our research strategy? We're going to ask you to elaborate on why you believe FFAR should work on and invest in the topics you mentioned above. And of course, if you're someone who would like to work with us and invest in research with us, that's what we want to hear as well. And then, of course, we would really welcome you to include the links or citations to any relevant research, evidence, or publications to support your comments that we can use to build the evidence base for our strategy. And with that, we will transition to the Q&A portion of our webinar. I would invite questions that are particularly around the process and how we'll be engaging with stakeholders and taking your inputs. I'm sure some of you will want to start answering the questions. We may not have time for that here today, so we'll start with questions about FFAR and about our research refresh. So if you have a question for myself or for Dr. Hurd about our refresh process, please enter it into the chat.
We have one question, both for you, Dr. Chapman and Dr. Hurd. The comment is, this person is interested to understand the research that FFAR makes possible that would not otherwise be possible without FFAR's existence, and what makes FFAR most necessary and valuable.
Do you want to take that, Dr. Hurd, or should I take a first stab at it?
I would just like to say that one of the reasons that FFAR is necessary and very much needed is because of the public-private partnership that occurs through FFAR. Because inevitably, whenever the private sector collaborates and participates in research with FFAR, and you have that opportunity to do that, the results of the research are going to be closer to application. So it's going to be directly the needs of the producer or the company that they're looking for. And so at the same time, all of the research through FFAR is also available to the public, where stakeholders would be able to access and quickly implement any breakthroughs that may have arisen out of the research with FFAR.
Thank you. And I would add that FFAR works, as you noted, in that public-private space. And as such, we complement what the public sector is investing in. And we sometimes can work in ways that are a bit different than the public sector works in. We do prizes, we do consortia. And as you noted, we work so closely with the private sector. So it's really in that niche, that pre-competitive space that FAR can work, that we can bring new approaches and can tackle topics that perhaps aren't being addressed in either sector.
And as a reminder, for any questions that you have, enter them in the chat. I'll read them aloud, and then Dr. Chapputin and Dr. Hurd will answer them. So another question we have is, can you explain how FAR's current challenge areas are related to the draft research themes that you described today?
That's a great question. I anticipate that the research that we are doing in our challenge areas will continue to be a priority going forward. Our current challenge areas address themes like sustainable water management, soil science, climate change, advanced animal systems, new crops, and these are all important areas in agriculture science. What may change is how we organize ourselves to support that research. And rather than having those in separate programs, perhaps we'll be able to bring more integrated approaches that combine, for example, agronomy and crop protection and new genetics into one research program, just as an example.
And this is a question, I believe, for you, Dr. Chapputin. Will the matching funds requirements for the programs change going forward as a result of the research refresh?
No, the matching funds requirement comes to us from Congress, so I anticipate that that will remain unless Congress chooses to change that. We will continue to seek matching funds for all of the research that we do at FAR. We are always looking for opportunities to identify those matching funds, and we, to the extent possible, try to do that work ourselves so that researchers can come and access both FAR funds and matching funds when they apply to work with us.
Can the research proposal process include ideas or thoughts for needs for programming rather than research topics? For example, FAR's Innovator Fellows and Investor Fellows, if there's another possibility or opportunity there.
Sure, we'll accept all ideas.
Another question we have is, can you comment with this refresh what the balance between basic and applied research will be?
I might ask Dr. Hurd, from industry perspective, where would you like to see FAR's research fall in that balance?
But of course, coming from industry, I'm going to say we always love applied research. It's always good to have practical research that can be directly related to field situations. With that said, there's always a need for the basic sciences and research as well. So I would say a good balance of applied versus basic research is definitely needed and would be considered through FAR.
And here's another question for Dr. Hurd. What role can industry perspective bring to FAR's research strategy refresh?
That's a very good question. And I think that having the industry perspective is extremely important for FAR. For the FAR research strategy refresh, because industry involvement, insight, and collaboration, it really brings that real world eye-opening look at the critical issues and the emerging disruptions and the unexpected challenges that research can address and potentially solve. So having that industry perspective is crucial.
Mm-hmm. And another question, I believe this is both for Dr. Chapputin and Dr. Hurd. Can you elaborate a little more on why a research strategy refresh now? Like, what brought this on?
That's a great question. I think it's important anytime you're managing a large research portfolio is always to be engaging with stakeholders and staying current. But this feels like a great opportunity. FAR is funded through the Farm Bill. This is, I think everyone knows, a Farm Bill year, and I wanted to be prepared to invest any funds that we may receive through the Farm Bill and that we would receive through match from our partners in the direction that will address today's food and agriculture challenges. And so this felt like a very good moment to reach out to stakeholders, to get your inputs, to really understand agriculture is changing very rapidly, and to really understand what are the needs of today and what are the needs of tomorrow.
Dr. Chapputin, this question is for you. How is the risk versus reward opportunity going to be evaluated?
That's an excellent question. I think that relates a little bit to the question about a basic and applied research. I think it's important to take risks in research. I don't think that every research investment will necessarily yield the impacts that you anticipate. But I think that you also need to do that research that will deliver results that has a nearer term impact that perhaps is more certain, even if it's not as groundbreaking as some very risky research you might take. So the way I see it, when you build a research portfolio, you have a great balance of basic research and applied research. And you also balance those high risk, high reward investments with perhaps those investments that are lower risk, but still generate the very necessary information and tools that producers and others in the food and agriculture value chain will need.
This is following up on the basic versus applied question. Does the area of synthetic biological development of foods perceive to be outside of FFAR support?
I think that's a good question for us to evaluate. I don't know that I have a clear answer to that right now. I think it's definitely within the space of food and agriculture, and as such, it's something that we would be considering through the research refresh.
Another question we have is the last horizon for strategy was 8 years. What is the horizon for this strategy refresh? Will the process be reviewed, or has it been for periodic review in the future?
That's another good question. I think I would put about a 5-year time frame on this, but I think that periodic review is absolutely necessary. I think food and agriculture changes much more rapidly than every 5 years. And so I would anticipate that we would be constantly looking and evaluating, looking at our strategy, evaluating it, and ensuring that it continues to meet stakeholder needs. Dr. Hurd, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I agree with it. This is something that's going to be a high priority for us. We want to keep up with the changes that are going on around the world. And so priorities change sporadically, and we need to ensure that we are evaluating and reevaluating our strategies very often so that we can maintain and keep up with the changes.
Dr. Hurd, to follow up on that, can you elaborate on any issues that the poultry industry is seeing down the road and what research would be needed to address these?
Yeah, so like most agricultural sectors, the poultry industry have many research needs. However, currently a chief concern is the ongoing highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak that appears to have no end in sight. This is the largest HPAI outbreak in history. And even with increased biosecurity efforts, the virus continues to get into barns and wreak havoc. So the poultry industry needs more research into this area, into the disease, into how the disease is being spread, better control measures, and prevention methods as well.
Thank you. And we have a couple more questions here. One of which is noting that we've talked a lot about agriculture and food. And is there a role for FFAR in supporting research in natural resources and specifically forestry?
That's a great question. I think our focus is the food and agriculture system, but the food and ag system sits within the broader environment, and it touches on issues of natural resources, and I would say forestry is a form of agriculture, especially when it's, you think of agroforestry, I think is very much within our mandate. So I think that's probably a bit on the periphery, but it's something that we would consider as we're considering the needs of the food and ag sector, and also considering how agriculture impacts the natural environment.
And another one we have here is, can you answer how the balance will change between agricultural research and food science and technology research with this reset?
I think that's what we're here to find out today. We would love to hear from agriculture and food stakeholders as to what are the research needs. And I think what we hear from you will help inform that balance of agriculture research and food science research, for example.
Another question, how will FFAR address crops that are not the focus of current industry goals, such as alternative crop processing infrastructure?
That's an excellent question. I think when you consider the high level impacts that I laid out at the beginning, we're looking for an agriculture system that delivers benefits to producers, but also to consumers, and nutritional benefits and sustainability benefits. And so if there are crops that we need to consider in the US food and agriculture system that are not currently industry priorities, there's perhaps some work to be done on engaging with industry to understand how that crop could rise as a priority. And then there are other funders, foundations, others who are invested in a sustainable outcome for U.S. agriculture that may be interested to match our resources and support that kind of research.
A question about DEI efforts. So with the commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion mentioned earlier, what is FAR doing to make the existing or future programs more accessible and equitable for researchers from historically marginalized groups and for individuals from institutions not traditionally funded by FAR?
That's an excellent question. And it's one we're tackling a number of different ways. We, when we consider how we recruit researchers to apply for our awards, we need to make sure that that information is getting to all researchers at all colleges and universities and other places where they may work, and not just to perhaps the traditional land grant or ag schools. So that's one way. We're always considering, and this is something we're doing right now, how do we write our opportunities and how do we make them available to researchers, and how can we do so in a way that promotes inclusivity and equitable access to our opportunities. An area that we know can be a challenge is identifying those matching funds, and the university or college that you sit in can influence how much you're able to access matching funds. And so that's a point that we're considering very carefully, and we're constantly looking for opportunities to line up the match ahead of time so that the opportunity we put out doesn't come with that matching requirement. That's not always possible, and we know researchers have their own networks and abilities to tap into matching funds, and that's a very valuable resource as well when researchers can bring those. But we are looking for opportunities to provide that service ahead of time, as it were.
We have a question about stakeholder engagement. What is the level of stakeholder engagement with this research refresh? Not just this open webinar, but feedback from end users of your research efforts. For example, farmers, extension agents, et cetera. How are you reaching the boots on the ground?
That's another great question. And I agree, that's a very important group of stakeholders that we are engaging. And as I mentioned, in addition to our public consultation, we are having focused discussion groups, and we're also having a lot of conversations with key stakeholders, which includes producer associations. So we'll be reaching out to producer associations across the United States to get that input from them and from their membership about what farmers and producers need.
How are you going to measure success or failure of the focus and projects in 10 years?
I think that is the eternal question when you're investing in research, is how do you quantify your success? At the same time as we are building this research strategy, we are also building a learning agenda, a monitoring and evaluation system that will accompany our research so that we are engaging researchers early on to establish the metrics and the reporting systems that allow us to capture that impact, perhaps even after the grant has ended. The grant may end and the impact may come 3-5 years down the line, and we want to have the systems in place to be able to capture that and report on it.
And we have another question about who is eligible for FAR funding. Someone would like to know whether the institutions from other countries can apply for research support with FAR.
Absolutely. We welcome applicants from all over the world. We prioritize research that will have a benefit in the United States, that will benefit the US food and agriculture system, but that will also benefit globally or have an impact beyond the United States' borders. And to me, that's very important, that you could do that research that will be beneficial here in the United States and will have impact in other regions or countries as well. And so one consideration for me as we do this prioritization is how do we elevate those challenges that are global in nature, where through research and through partnership with scientists in other countries, with industry in other countries, you can take on challenges like avian influenza that Dr. Hurd mentioned, that is not just a problem in the United States, but potentially at a global level.
Mm-hmm. Is the best way to provide feedback through a written submission, and/or can stakeholders request meetings to discuss their input?
We certainly welcome hearing from you, and there will be an email address on the Research Refresh webpage that you can use. But getting your input in through that web portal will ensure that we've captured it and it's entered into sort of aligned with the questions that we're asking. And that will be one of the ways to ensure that we really get your input and consider it as we synthesize across the input we're getting from all stakeholders.
We have time for a couple more questions. We have one that regarding matching funding, can matching funding come from another foundation or another federal source, or is it strictly industry?
It can definitely come from another foundation or any other non-federal source.
And what has FAR shown for returns on their grants for the last 10 years?
That's another great question. So FAR has not even been in existence for 10 years. I think our first grants were made towards the end of 2015. So we're a relatively young organization, and many of our grants are still actually underway. However, we have initiated a process to go back and connect with former grantees and to interview them and to measure and assess the impacts of those grants. So that's a process that's underway. We have lots of wonderful stories. I was at a conference this week and met a CEO of a small company who said that the grant that she received from FAR early on was exactly what she needed to unlock the potential of her technology. And she has now taken that technology all the way through to commercialization, has received significant funding from larger industry investors, and is about to have tremendous impact through a technology, a new crop variety that really was made possible through the initial funding she received from FAR. So those impact stories are there, and we're now at the point where we're collecting them and attempting to quantify them in a more measurable way.
Two more questions. One is regarding how FAR defines nutrition. Does this allow for exploration beyond basic nutrition? There's still a lot of nutrition dark matter to be discovered. And then a similar question is if we see a role for FAR in biochar research.
And I can try to tackle those. I think the biochar research definitely has potential within FAR, as well as the nutritional question as well, because we are trying to really be broad and open to all of the different areas of research that definitely needs to be looked into. And so we're not saying, there's a definite no to anything. So we're open, and that your best opportunity to really provide an in-depth review of the research that you're proposing is going to be through that comment period, so that we can really find out where the needs are and be able to address those with the researchers as well as within the industry.
This is another question about stakeholder engagement. To receive input on the refresh, are you engaging with professional organizations such as National Association of Plant Breeders or Tri-Societies, or does membership of these organizations need to be proactive? So basically how we're engaging with different groups.
Yeah, absolutely. We've identified a long list of stakeholder groups, including professional associations, and we'll be reaching out to invite you to share your thoughts with us. But certainly, if you think you may not be on our list or we haven't gotten to you yet, please feel free to reach out.
One question is, will the presentation be available on the website? And yes, it will. The link that was dropped in the chat has all the materials related to the research refresh. So we'll have the webinar, and then also live now for the next 30 business days is that comment portal. So you can leave comments to some of those questions that we had discussed earlier. And also if you have follow-up questions, there's an email address listed at the top of that research strategy refresh webpage. It's researchrefresh@foundationfar.org. So you can submit any further questions there. And looks like one other question we'll share, and then maybe Dr. Chappeton, I'll turn it back to you for closing remarks. Final question is, do you think there's a greater need, or what is currently being done for sharing connections between FAR and NIFA on projects, for example, discussing and addressing similarities or determining cooperative efforts?
That's a great question. As part of, well, we have a special relationship with USDA. Of course, we are USDA's foundation. We heard from Dr. Toombs earlier, currently acting director of NIFA, an ex officio member of our board. So we're in frequent and constant contact with USDA. However, as it relates to the research refresh, we will be also reaching out to federal agencies that have equities or investments in the agriculture research space. So obviously NIFA and ARS would be included as part of that, and have a more in-depth conversation about how we can complement the work that the federal agencies are doing and how we can partner and collaborate more closely on that work.
Okay, and this is the final question because it's a good wrap up. Can you clarify/repeat your next steps after receiving the input? Will it manifest in a single formal RFP?
Great, good question. So we are receiving the input over the coming weeks. We will synthesize that input. And you see some other folks on the screen here are team members who are joining me in this effort. We will synthesize that input. We will consider it as we define our research strategy, which will really be a guiding document, guiding the prioritization of our research efforts, guiding the level of investment into different areas, and ensuring that the priorities of the U.S. food and agriculture system are reflected in our document. It will result likely in a number of research areas, and as we currently do, we will continue to work through many different modalities, including competitive RFAs, including consortia, including perhaps one-off announcements around a specific topic or challenge, including prizes or other modalities for research. So we will continue to have a broad range of research opportunities available, but those research opportunities will be guided by the research strategy that we are developing today. Before I close, Dr. Hurd, did you have any final comments you'd like to make?
No, I just want to say that we're really looking forward to receiving all of your feedback and comments regarding the research refresh strategy. Please don't hesitate to let us know or reach out to us directly if there is a particular area that you would like to discuss. And just thank you for joining us today on this webinar. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, Dr. Hurd, thank you so much for being with us today. Thanks to Dr. Toombs for her remarks, and especially a huge thanks to all of you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon and for sharing your excellent questions. We look forward to receiving your input, and we encourage you to use the form on our website and enter your comments and your thoughts and your ideas and your suggestions and your citations and the evidence that you think will help us to improve our research programs and truly prioritize our research efforts. Thank you very much.